Are we wrong? Yes, we are. What's up, guys? It's your boy McKinley Crain here, and today I'm going to be doing my spoiler-free movie review of the 1997 sequel to the 1995 film Mortal Kombat, which I wish never existed. I'm referring to the sequel, of course. The original film was fine. It's the sequel. It's the sequel, aka this one, that I got a problem with. And that sequel is Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Let's get into it. So if you couldn't already tell, I don't like this movie. It's not a good movie. It's not even an okay movie. It's a terrible movie. It's a terrible film. It's really bad. It's really stupid and not even in a good way. It's not even a guilty pleasure, like, cause you have to actually get pleasure. Like, you have to actually be feeling pleasure while watching it to, like, to call it a guilty pleasure. Is it entertainingly bad? Yes. But at the end of the day, we all know that entertainingly bad is still just bad. Anyway, let's get into it. Anyway, so this is like, an action movie. And yes, it does have a lot of action. And of course, most of it is just crap. And it's just really stupid action, and it's just really lazy. It's just it looks so lazy, but not all of it is like that. Some of it's actually pretty good. Yeah, so even though this was like a terrible movie, it did have, like, a few things in it that I liked. But those things weren't those things and those elements that I did like in this movie weren't good enough to redeem this movie, to like make it watchable. They weren't. Anyway, so those, like, there are like a few good action scenes. Like I said, there are like a few good action scenes in this movie. Some really good cinematography. Especially, no, not especially, specifically, within the first 20 minutes, there was one action scene in particular that I'm referencing, which I was actually impressed by. I thought that the cinematography and the stunts in that, like, 2 to 4 minute action scene were actually pretty good. And I was just like, at that moment, I was just like, maybe this movie isn't as bad as I expected it to be. Maybe this might actually end up being decent. But I was wrong. It was still bad. It was a terrible movie, just like I expected it to be. And just to be honest, I'm glad I expected this movie to be terrible, because honestly, it feels way worse to watch a movie that you think is gonna be good or at least decent, and then, like, find out, wait a minute, this is terrible, than it does to just watch a movie that's terrible and, like, go into it knowing that it's probably going to be terrible, and just, not really caring if it's terrible, because you already know that it's terrible, that it's going to be terrible. That's what it was like watching this movie. It was just so bad. It was it's not as bad as it's not as bad of a movie as a lot of people like make it out to be. It's not one of the worst films of all time, but it is pretty bad. Um, it's got, like I said, it's got like a few fun action scenes. Well, actually, more like two fun action scenes. The rest are all just either crap or just average. This movie has really bad acting, especially from a certain character. A certain character in this movie that every time they open their mouth, I was just like, what? Why? Why would you find that like an acceptable like line of dialogue to like say? Like, why would you just say that and like expect people to not criticize what you just said? Like, anyway, so this was a specific character that like, was gave the worst performance in the whole movie. Not gonna say any names, but we all know who that was. Yeah. Anyway, her performance wasn't the only bad performance in this movie. Um, uh, Nobody actually gives like a good performance in this movie. Not one character. They're actually most of the characters give bad performances, all except for one. Um, this like character Ajax that I don't even think was in the original film. I can't remember because I watched the original film back in November. It's been a while. He was okay. I mean, he was a little bit funny. I mean, he was just okay. He could be bad sometimes. He could be like a bad character or cringy character sometimes, like with cringy dialogue and with cringy acting. But most of the time it was okay. But as for the rest of the cast, they weren't even okay. The closest other cast member that gets closest to being okay, like to giving an okay performance, was like Liu Kang. I mean, but his performance was still bad. It wasn't a terrible performance, but it was, well, at times it could be a terrible performance, but overall it was just bad. Just bad, but not terrible. Anyway, I was not disappointed by this movie because I had no expectations going into it. In fact, the only reason why I kind of wanted to watch this movie was because, so, you know how the new Mortal Kombat remake is coming out tomorrow, and it looks good and everything? Well, I'm gonna watch that tomorrow, and I want to rank all three live-action Mortal Kombat movies. But in order to do that, I had to watch this movie. Because it's not like I could just lie and say, oh, well, I didn't actually see Annihilation or anything while I was like doing my upcoming ranking video of the Mortal Kombat movies. But like, I'm just gonna assume that it's in this place. You know what I'm saying? I just couldn't do that. So I was just like, okay, I gotta watch this movie. It doesn't matter how bad it is, it looks, I gotta watch it. So I did. And it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. But it still was pretty terrible. It was just bad. Anyway, so let me just give you some facts about this movie, like, just in case you're actually gonna watch it, which is actually, if you haven't already seen it and you see this video, like, you finish it, you're probably not gonna want to watch it, or you are. It's either you are or you aren't. It's either you are gonna want to watch it out of curiosity for how bad it is, or you're not gonna want to watch it because you're just gonna be like, oh, that sounds bad. Or you're probably just not gonna finish my video, and you probably just clicked on the video because of the thumbnail, and the second you saw, like, the background and everything in my face, you just immediately clicked off. Yes, that does happen. That has happened. Like, you can just go in YouTube Studio, like, anybody could just go into YouTube Studio who has a YouTube channel and, like, see what the average, like, duration for, like, their video's watch time was. And yeah, some of my videos, like, it's just like 1 second. They only watch 1 second. Oh, yeah, that's why. Anyway, back on topic. This movie's, like, has the original cast from the first one in it. And it's a direct sequel to the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie. Although, I kind of wish these two movies weren't related, because the original Mortal Kombat movie was actually pretty decent. It was okay. It was mildly enjoyable. It wasn't a good movie, but it wasn't a bad movie. It was an okay movie. It was enjoyable enough. But this movie's just bad. Annihilation is just crap. It's trash. It doesn't even feel like a Mortal Kombat movie. It feels like a parody of a Mortal Kombat movie. Like, it feels like a parody movie that's supposed to be parodying a Mortal Kombat movie. For most of the movie. Of course. Because, the thing is, this movie wants you to take it seriously, but it's like, how could you take this movie seriously? It's got, like, the lamest and corniest and cringiest moments, all in a bad way, of course. And, like, the dumbest moments, like, all in a bad way in it. And I was like, how are you supposed to take this seriously? I mean, if this were a parody, if this were supposed to be like a parody or something, maybe I'd think more highly of it, but no. This was supposed to be a serious movie. That's what they were aiming for, but they failed. They failed. This movie had the potential to be good, but, they ruined it. Did I mention it was poorly executed? This movie's execution is just awful. Like, it's one of the, like, worst things about this movie, besides the like, overall, like, story, and she who must not be named, worst actress in this movie, and one of the worst actresses ever that I know of, because I haven't seen this lady in any other movie, but in this movie, you know who I'm talking about. I already, if you don't know who I'm talking about, it's who I was talking about earlier in this video. Katana. It's like, her performance was just, no, not Katana. I forgot that the chick's mother who wants to kill her, the chick's dead mother, that's not a spoiler. It was in the trailer, everybody knows that. Who wants to kill her, well, mother who was presumed to be dead who wants to kill her. Whoever plays her, that's who I'm talking about. And that was the worst performance in this movie. That was a gosh awful performance. What the hell was this lady thinking when she read the flipping script? Like, anybody could just tell that, like, those lines of dialogue were just awful, but it's like, was she blind or something? No, clearly not, because maybe she didn't. I'm starting to think that maybe she didn't really read her lines, like, say her lines correctly. I think that she just forgot her lines and then, like, maybe made up her own. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. No, I think. No, she probably said the lines correctly, but whoever wrote this movie, like, was just, I think, was drunk or something, like, while writing it. Like, how high was the screenwriter who wrote this movie? How high were the producers to actually think that this was an acceptable movie with acceptable dialogue and acceptable characters? And speaking of the characters, all the characters in here are flat and one-dimensional. Like, in the last movie, like, they actually had some necessary character development. And you're probably thinking, well, some movies don't, like, need a lot of character development. Well, this one did. And even if it didn't need any character development or anything, it has some attempts at character development in it that fail. So even if, like, this movie doesn't need character development, it doesn't change the fact that there's still a whole bunch of failed character development attempts in this movie that are just awful and don't really, like, add on to anybody's character at all. They just make you cringe. And honestly, I don't even know if this movie made much money. But, if it did, honestly, money's probably why. Money's not. Actually, I can't say that money's the only reason why this movie was made, because, it was like, the cliffhanger at the ending of its predecessor, like, set up for a sequel. So this movie, like, wasn't just made for no reason. But you could tell that this was mostly made for money, which is probably why whoever the heck played the worst character in this movie, who, if you don't know already who I'm talking about, you should have already figured that out, probably signed on to play their role, like, because, they were just like, screw it, who cares if this ruins my career? I get money. The first Mortal Kombat movie did make money. That's probably why. Anyway, so let's get on to, like, acting. Let's dive into the acting more in this movie. This movie's acting a little bit more. Anyway, the worst acting, like, the worst acting that I haven't mentioned comes from, like, the other villains in this movie. Like, not just the presumed dead mother who turns out not to be dead. That's not a spoiler, by the way. Everybody knows that. That's in the trailer. I think. It's not just her who's horrible at acting. Like, it's not just the lady who was playing her who's horrible at acting. It's whoever was playing the rest of the villains too. They're not as bad as her, but they're pretty bad. And yes, this movie does have a whole bunch of villains. This movie was just awful, and I know I've said that like 4 million times, but I just have to keep saying it and keep saying it and keep saying it. it was just like who actually like who thought this was it was a good idea to like actually release this thing in the theaters. It's horrible. It's like it's awful, and it's just it's got so many annoying characters. Like one in particular that's and don't worry, it's not who I was just talking about. This is a new annoying character. This is my second least favorite character in the whole film, and I don't even know his name. He's super annoying and super stupid and just super unlikable, like the majority of the characters in this movie. Actually, Liu Kang and Jax weren't unlikable. They just weren't well played. Okay, Jax was not mediocrely played. He was, you know, whoever played him did a decent job of playing him. But Liu Kang, he's not unlikable, but whoever was playing him, I forgot who plays Liu Kang in this movie. But they weren't doing a very good job at playing him. It was just a bad job, and so story-wise, Liu Kang's not unlikable, but movie-wise, he's very unlikable because he wasn't well, well performed. No, well acted. Whatever. Anyway, and moving on to and yes, I'm still not done ranting on about this movie. What's it been like now? Like 10 minutes? 10 minutes of me ranting on? I don't know. Somewhere around there. Anyway, all that isn't even the least of it. Or the least of this movie's problems. Besides lazy writing, lazy ass writing, seriously, just lazy writing. Like, why? Who? It's like, why would they even hire the flipping? Whoever wrote this movie was like as lazy AF. It's like, why? Awful, bad, and there was one particular one particular thing in this movie that made me go, that made me that bothered me the most about this movie's writing, and about this movie's story in general. And I can't say what it is because that would be a spoiler. Even though you're probably not going to watch this film anyway, unless you're just curious to see how bad it is, or if you're just like, it's a Mortal Kombat movie, so it has to be good because I like Mortal Kombat, and therefore anything with Mortal Kombat characters in it is good. Yeah, those people exist. Anyway, moving on to more of the bad, the special effects in this movie and the CGI. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you can't really judge this movie's special effects, and this movie's CG, because it's from '97. Of course it's gonna look a little dated. And yeah, sure, it does look a little dated. Okay, lies. That I was being sarcastic. It doesn't just look a little dated. It looks horribly dated. And it was horrible CGI even for the time. It looks unfinished and not to mention ugly. I mean, just embarrassing. Like, there's even horrible CGI in the final battle, which is like a big no-no. It's just horrible CGI. Just look. Just watch this. Just look at what I'm about to show you. Yeah, it looks like a high school student animated that. It's like a high school student taking like a computer class, like doing his or her first project, animated that. Like, no, not even animated that. Not even like finished that. It's like it looks like a flipping high school student, like, started his or her project, animation project for school. Got lazy, went, screw it. This sucks. I want to go play video games, or like hang out with my friends or something, or just sleep, or go to the movies or something, and then just stopped halfway. And then they were just like, well, didn't finish it, but got to turn in what I did. Better than getting a 0. Better than not turning anything at all. That's how bad the CGI in this movie is. It's bad. Still don't believe me? Believe me now? Hopefully. This movie was just bad. It was garbage. It's got some of the worst acting ever in it. And you're probably thinking, well, then why isn't it one of the worst movies ever? And I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that, like, now actually. Why it's not one of the worst movies I've ever seen? Like, I've considered to like seeing like one of the movies that I've seen that I consider to be the worst, is because of just, I already mentioned this, but it's because, one, it's got a few fun fight scenes, really fun fight scenes. Well, 2 actually, but those still help the movie a little bit. Although it's still a terrible movie, those do kind of like help the movie. Like, it would be one of the worst movies of all time without those 2 scenes. And the second reason is, although it's a terrible movie, and it's a cringy movie, and it's a stupid movie, and it's a dumb movie, and it's an annoying movie, it's not boring at all. It's not boring at all. The pacing's actually pretty decent. Actually, the pacing has nothing to do with, like, I don't know why I said that. Why I said the pacing's not decent at all, like right after I said this movie's not boring. Because, pacing doesn't really have anything to do with how boring a movie is. I don't know. Anyway, this movie's not boring. It's entertainingly bad. It's like, just how bad it is kind of entertains you. Not kind of entertains you. It's like, it's entertaining, and it's entertaining to see how bad this movie is, and it's interesting to just watch this movie and just observe all the bad stuff in it, and just think to yourself what the cast and crew and creators of this movie were thinking. And this is still a terrible movie. I'm not saying it's redeemable at all. It has nothing redeems this movie. This is a terrible movie. But it's not one of the worst movies ever, in my opinion. Like everybody says it is. It is a terrible movie. Once again, it is. It is a terrible movie. It's crap. It's trash. I hate it. It's awful. It's a dumpster fire. And it's a mess. But it's not one of the worst films of all time. Because of what I just said. I already explained why. Anyway. Hopefully. Okay. Anyway. I don't even have to say hopefully. Anyway, I'm gonna watch the 2021 Mortal Kombat remake tomorrow when it comes out, when it's released digitally. And it looks really good. I have high expectations for it. I know I'm gonna like it. I don't really know how much I'm gonna like it, but I know I'm probably gonna like it. Might hate it, but the odds of that are fairly slim. I mean, if you didn't already know, I'm usually pretty soft on I'm usually pretty soft on movies. Like, you know, a lot of elements in a movie that bother me, I mean that bother other people, don't really bother me, which is why I like a lot of movies that people hate. I don't like this movie that I'm reviewing in this video right now, which is Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I hate that. I hate Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I hate the movie I'm reviewing in this video. But I wasn't talking about that movie. I'm talking about the movie I'm gonna watch tomorrow, which is the new Mortal Kombat movie, which I know I'm probably gonna like. Anyway, hopefully we'll never get another Mortal Kombat Annihilation movie again. I'm not saying we should never get another Mortal Kombat movie again, because I want more Mortal Kombat movies, and I want the movie that's coming out tomorrow, like, because it looks awesome. And honestly, we needed it. We needed to reboot the franchise after this movie was made. And it should have happened sooner. But it happened. Well, the movie hasn't... It's been released overseas, so yeah, I can say it happened. Anyway, back on the topic of the movie that this video is about, and the movie that I'm doing my spoiler-free review of. I hate Mortal Kombat Annihilation. It's horrible. It's a dumpster fire. It's trash. It's cringy. It's awful. It's bad. Don't watch it. I'm going to give this movie a 40% out of 100%, which is the equivalent of an F+. You can watch it if you so choose to. If you want to see how bad it is, or you just want to watch it because you want to, like, you know, have the right to say that you've seen every Mortal Kombat movie that's been made, just so you can feel like you get to say what your opinion is on this movie, you should watch it. Or maybe if you really do want to see it, you should watch it. But it's terrible. Just letting you know, it's terrible. This like, funny thing, this movie's motto when it was coming out, like, was that they were putting on, like, the posters for it and everything, was destroy all expectations. And let me just say, you can say that again, because, like, you know, you should destroy all expectations, just not in the way that they were saying. Like, literally, just take every expectation you have for this movie, every good expectation, if you did have a good expectation for this movie, but that's very unlikely, especially after watching this video, and just crush it, because this movie's crap. It's trash. It's awful. It's horrible. I hated it. It's stupid. It's stupid and just retarded. Yeah, I meant that in a non-offensive way, by the way. No offense to anybody who's actually, like, you know, actually has special needs or something. Like, I didn't mean that word like that. I meant, when I said it, I meant, like, stupid. Like, just stupid, like, describing something. Like, okay, this isn't stupid, but I had to pick something up. Like, this movie is stupid. Like, that's what I meant by that. So, Don't freak out if you get offended, if you're easily offended. Anyway, like I said, I'm giving this movie a score of a 40% out of 100%, which is the equivalent of an F+. And yes, that score an F+ does exist. On my score scale, it does. Anyway, like, subscribe, join the notification squad. I will return.